All right, everybody, before we get going, I want to make sure we're all in the right view. So if you want to hover over my face in the top right corner, you're going to see something. It should say speaker view. I mean, if you're only seeing my face right now, you're in speaker view, but if you're seeing a bunch of little faces, you're in gallery view. So you want to only be seeing one face right now.
Okay, I'm seeing you.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna wait one more minute before. All right, we good, Kelsey? All righty. So hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Alexandra. I'm one of the emerging technologies librarians here at the Hudson Library, and welcome everybody to our virtual author program this evening. Just one more time for anyone new who's joining us, make sure you're in the speaker view. If to do that, you're going to hover over my face, and in the top right corner, you should see, it will say speaker view up top. If you're seeing a bunch of little squares all over the page with other people's faces, you're in the wrong view, so switch to speaker. I want to welcome everyone again to our virtual author series. Tonight's streaming event will feature best-selling author Linda Castillo in conversation with audiobook narrator Catherine McInerney.
Yes.
Our virtual author series is going to continue later on in August with astronomer David Dickinson. He's the author of Backyard Astronomer's Field Guide, How to Find the Best Objects the Night Sky Has to Offer, which is perfect timing with the comet right now. And that's going to be on Monday, August 3rd at 7 p.m. We're also on Wednesday, August 5th at 7 p.m. We're going to welcome international bestselling author Angie Kim, who wrote Miracle Creek, which was named Best Book of the Year by Time Magazine. Registration for all this can be found in the chat below. I also want to ask you guys, as time going on, if you're joining us here on Zoom or if you're joining us here on Facebook, feel free to submit your questions in the chat, and if we have time, we will ask them if we have time at the end of the program. I would also like to encourage you to check out the link in the chat to the Learned Owl bookshop. We will be having, if you purchase a book from the Learned Owl, we will be having signed book plates. So you will be sent that with addition to your book, so that will be all found in the link below. So now that that's all out of the way, let's talk about tonight's program. So first, I'd like to welcome New York Times bestselling author Linda Castillo. She's originally from Ohio, where her Amish thrillers are set. She has published over 30 books and has won many awards. Her debut thriller, Sworn in Silence, spent 4 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, and the series continued on to be an international success. Sworn to Silence was also adopted into a two-hour original movie titled An Amish Murder, starring Neve Campbell. And her latest book, Outsider, is the 12th book in the Kate Burkholder series. Tonight, Linda's going to be joined in conversation with Kathleen McInerney. Kathleen has narrated numerous audiobooks by best-selling authors and has even won an audiophile earphones award for her narration of One Day by Gail Forman. She has also appeared on stage in New York and around the US in both classical and contemporary theater. Her credits include television commercials, daytime drama, radio plays, and voiceover narration. So thank you, everyone, and welcome to our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm absolutely honored to be here tonight. Kathleen, it is an absolute honor to be here with you tonight. I have to tell you, I've listened, it's a little odd. I've listened to the Kate Burkholder Amish Mystery Series several times during road trips, so my husband could hear the books. Wow. And you are the voice of Kate Burkholder.
Oh, gosh.
By the way, I should introduce myself. I'm Linda Castillo. I write the Kate Burkholder Amish Mystery Series.
And I'm Kathleen McInerney. I narrate them so luckily and fortunately. I am an enormous fan of yours, Linda, from, gosh, we've known each other in a sense so many years.
Yeah.
But to, as I was just saying, to be kind of in your head when I'm trying to figure out who these characters are and why they are. And now here we are together in this virtual room. It's just thrilling. And thank you everybody for joining us. These are crazy, chaotic times, and to have a moment to just focus on this. And I have to say, and the New York Times agrees with your outstanding writing. And these stories have just gone, gosh, 12 books. That's at least 12 years there.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Really amazing.
Well, thank you. It's difficult for me to even believe that we're already into the 12th book. I started the series. When I started the series, I believe the first book, Sworn to Silence, came out in 2009. I really had no idea how long the series was going to be, or what kinds of things were going to happen to the characters, how these characters were going to evolve. And I'm actually working on the next book in the series, so it's going to be going on quite a while longer, at least I would say about 4 more books at least.
Oh, well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm sure everyone else is, but I am. So how did you ever get the idea that got you started on writing these books? Because Kate, I think, is such an extraordinary character and female character. We don't see a protagonist a female protagonist usually, who's so strong, but also she is a woman, but her being a woman isn't the focus of the books either. She's just an incredible, genuine, driven law enforcement person. So how did you get the idea to start with her?
That is such a great question. You may not know this about me, but I actually started my career. I sold my first book in 1999. I began my career as a romance author.
Oh.
And I wrote for 2 different publishers, romance. Started out with Harlequin. From there, I moved over to Berkeley. I wrote some romantic suspense, single titles. And, at the time I had, there was a small period of time where I was actually working for both publishing houses. I was working for Harlequin, and I was also working for Berkeley. And of course I had 2 editors at the time. And so I would turn in the book, and I realized that I was getting very similar feedback from both authors. They're saying, basically, Linda, these are romance novels. You need to be focusing on the relationship. And, they were basically telling me that I needed to stop killing people. And that was the point when I realized that I was really writing the wrong genre. My strength as a writer, aside from being able to create, characters and settings, was I wanted to write a breakout thriller. And so just on spec, I sort of, started thinking about a thriller. I wanted to write this breakout book. And, I was able to come up with a pretty high concept plot that I loved. But I knew I had been in publishing long enough to know that if this book wasn't good, that if it wasn't good enough, it was going to be rejected. And so I'm working on this book. I took a sort of a happenstance trip to Ohio Amish country, probably back in 2005, 2006, something like that, with my sister and my brother-in-law. And he grew up in a 200-year-old farmhouse. We went up there, we visited family, and it's like, 10 below zero, 10 inches of snow on the ground. We're saying our goodbyes. The trip has come to an end. I'm standing in the front yard looking out at this old German bank barn, and I hear the clip clop of shod hooves in the distance. And I turned around and I looked, and I saw an Amish buggy coming down this country road in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And as a writer, I started thinking about this high concept plot that I had been working on for basically months by that point.
Yeah.
And I thought that if I took that story and I made a few changes and I set that story among the Amish, that it might just have a chance.
Yeah.
And that was basically the birth of the first book in the series, Sworn to Silence.
Wow. I just remember that book so clearly because, as I mentioned to you, I was so scared reading that book that I couldn't even go to sleep in my bed. I had to sleep on the couch. It was riveting. And I found all of them to be exactly that. But I think that one of the things that you've gotten from these books is that we learn so much about um, the Amish world, as we could say, the way of life, their convictions, and also what Kate goes through as she kind of straddles both sides and is the bridge to both communities. And so we're in the thriller, but we're also learning so much, I think, which is, so do you have to then, how much research do you have to do for each book, into what happens within an Amish community or a law enforcement community?
That is, you're so right. I mean, with each book, it seems like there are several layers of different kinds of research that I need to do. But I have to tell you, one of the things that really drew me to writing this, this big first thriller that I had been thinking about for so long, was I loved that the juxtaposition of, Kathleen, have you ever traveled to Amish country, by the way? I'm just curious.
I've been through Pennsylvania, but I've not spent any time other than outside of these books with people or in the community like that.
Well,
so no.
And, one of the things that drew me, I love that, it's so bucolic, it's so beautiful. Amish country, Ohio it's just a beautiful, peaceful place. And one of the things that really drew me to that setting as a writer is that juxtaposition between this beautiful, peaceful place and these, the Amish people, this pacifistic, hardworking, family-oriented society, and then the injection of something evil into that.
Right.
And as a thriller writer, that really appealed to me. But in terms of research, I have a bazillion stories, but I'll keep it short since we don't have that much time tonight. But I travel to Amish country every year during the summer for a book tour. And I've met, well, for one thing, librarians. For anybody who doesn't know, librarians know everything. If you ever have a question about anything, they will be able to help you. But I befriended a librarian in Ohio, and she knows a lot of the local Amish. And I do have books on Amish culture. John Hotstetler wrote a fabulous book on the Amish culture, the religion, and just some of the traditions and the history of the Anabaptists. But I have to tell you that some of the best research that I've been able to do is visiting families. Denise, my librarian friend, knows a lot of the Amish families in Ohio. I was able to visit a family. They have a dairy farm in Walnut Creek, Sugar Creek, that general area. And it was such an honor, and it was such fun to have dinner with this family. A lot of people think that the Amish are, sort of stern, and oh no, they like to laugh. They have great sense of humor, just a busy family, a lot of children, great food, great company, great conversation. And for me as a writer, it was such a wonderful learning experience. And actually got to meet another Amish family. It wasn't for a sit-down meal. We basically just had iced tea and cookies out on the deck, and it was a Amish gentleman, his wife, and two older children. And he knows that I have horses at home. He knows that I was interested in horses. So he asked me if he would if I would like him to harness the horse and go for a buggy ride. And I said,
Wow.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love that. And of course he did. I followed him out and I sort of watched, all of this going on. I'm looking at the shoes on the horse and all of this. And we get in the buggy. Denise gets in the back. I'm in the passenger seat and he's driving. And I must have had a completely idiotic look on my face. It's a big smile. And he finally looks over at me and goes, well, would you like to drive? And I said, oh, yes. I would love that. And it was a really enlightening experience. It was just a great experience. Those are just two of the things that I've been lucky enough to be able to do in terms of Amish research. And one other thing I have to tell you, some of the books, all of the books have some degree of police procedural. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge John Sanford fan. I love the Lucas Davenport books, but I didn't know anything. Writing romance, I really didn't know anything about law enforcement. And so a writer buddy and I, we joined the Citizens Police Academy, which was so much fun. It was in Dallas, Texas. And it was a 12-week course. We met every Thursday night for 3 hours. And they basically had every department: homicide, crimes against persons, child abuse, narcotics, all of the, even patrol. They came in, a canine unit guy came in and just talked to us and told us the kinds of things that they deal with every day, what they do. And the course involved field trips. I got to do ride-alongs with male and female officers. And so that was extremely helpful in terms of, getting the law enforcement aspect of the books right. And of course, that's one thing that I've learned about cops is that they're always willing to answer questions. If I ever get stuck, if I'm writing a scene and I don't know what the proper procedure is, I can usually call somebody or email somebody and they'll answer my questions for me.
That's amazing. I think it informs your writing so much because so when I narrate the book, I of course have to, I read it all through, but I'm reading it and marking it to figure out, what's happening, who's talking, all of that. But I really feel like I'm in it. I can visualize how the police are thinking, what the situation is like, what it's like in that Amish house compared to the Englisher house, and so I really I'm sure that these experiences of yours, they've informed everything about your books because you're so specific, and I think that's one thing that draws all of us along and why we can't wait for the next book to come out. But isn't it interesting that we're in this moment now where we're talking about police, we're talking about getting back to basics. And even if all of us were able to take a class like you did, where we can understand what the police are called upon to do, what they are supposed to do, how we as a community can help, it's so informative.
Yeah.
That seems, I didn't even know something like that existed.
Yeah. A lot of communities. And, part of it, I think, is, not to get off topic or anything, but,
right.
All of it's a little bit of a PR thing. A lot of people, back then, several years ago when I, well, it's been about 10 years ago now that I went through the Citizens Police Academy, but, people were thinking, well, cops just like to write tickets and stuff like that.
Right.
And they invited people who live in the community, come in, sit down for 3 hours, let us talk to you and tell you what we do. Do you want to drive a police car? Do you want to go on a ride along with us? Do you want to go through maybe a couple of our training scenarios? And I have to tell you, as a writer, it was really fascinating. And the sergeant that put it on, he worked in undercover narcotics for something like 22 years. He was so funny. He could have done stand-up comedy.
Wow.
So it was fun. It was entertaining. But I think more than anything, it was informative as far as research with me being a writer. And, and I also made some friends in the course of that 12-week period that I still keep in touch with some of those guys to this day.
That's amazing. I think it also goes to how you're able to bring out the humanity in your characters and the situations. Like we're talking about you getting to go into the homes of these Amish people and eat the food, which then you describe in the book, which makes me want to cook it at home, which, so all of it ties into us living there in Ohio for a while and experiencing that. And I think that's why these characters that are a through line through your books with Kate and everyone in the police department and Tomasetti, and we understand them and we see them all grow and evolve through the stories. And I think that's what makes it, certainly there's some romance, but it takes it so far above the romance genre because this is about real life and about justice and also to preserve your community and make it a better place, which I think is it's the goal of each one of us in our real lives. But that's something that really stands out about the books to me.
Well, thank you. I have to tell you, my husband and I just made a big move. We moved 7 hours to the south, and over the course of probably the last 5 years or so, my husband prefers to listen to audiobooks as opposed to reading. He's kind of an informational reading kind of guy. And during those road trips, Kathleen, we listened to the audiobooks.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how you can listen to your writing. I think that's an amazing feat.
I had that same question. I was, I probably see, I'm probably more critical of my writing just because, I listen with a critical ear.
Right.
And, even when I do my editing, you have to be critical in order to, try to get things as good as possible. But Kathleen, I was wondering if you can take us through that process. I think of you when I'm listening to those books. You bring so much to those audiobooks. And I'm just wondering, how do you do it? What is that process like for you? I really don't have any idea.
So it's hard work and it's incredibly joyful work. So I get when it started out, when we started working together, we got the script on a pile of paper. And then you would have to move the paper in the recording booth ever so slowly so you couldn't hear it on the mic. But now we have iPads. And so I get the book. Now I read it on my iPad. I write I annotate, I notate each character. I write them all down on a piece of paper. And I could have brought that to this, I suppose, but I keep a stack of my past notes on each book. I have all the characters written out. And I put down descriptions of what you have said, what other characters have said about them, and their ages change as the books go on. And then I also note basically what page they first show up on, and then I just read the book and think about how the voices kind of fill in a sense, the tapestry. So on their own, maybe in another world, Pickles would sound different. But in this world, he has a particular voice because that's how he stands out from the people around him, for instance. And so I factor in certain things like that. Like if there's 6 women speaking in the book, then I kind of say, well, who will have the lowest voice, who has the highest? So in that way, it's an oddly stereotypical kind of, I don't know, putting them all together. And then when I go to the next book, I listen back to parts of the previous book to just see again where the characters were and how they ended up so that they can pick up from there.
Yeah.
But mostly I also do listen so that I make sure, I've never recorded a book without reading it through first.
Okay.
Because for your books especially, I need to know from the day we start recording, the who did it, so that you can factor it in so it doesn't give it away.
Right. Okay.
So in a
Okay.
way, and that's not to say that the like bad guy isn't going to have a bad voice, a mean voice, but at the same time, you have to know where you have to understand his character. How does he hide things? And I put he for this just as a generic, but like where's the cover? So it's like putting together a whole play, and I get to be all the characters. So I figure out what is their objective, when are they, when are they being truthful, when are they not, all of that stuff. I thought The Outsider especially is a really wonderfully challenging book, because as we, the audience, go through it, you don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really remarkable, actually. I don't want to give anything away. So, but that was a challenging, definitely challenging in a somewhat different way.
Yeah.
What I love though, I love Kate, when she often has something where she really puts her life on the line. And when she's running through the fields, and when she's, like, I don't know how she lives through any of these things. And I love living as Kate through all of this. And I actually think of her as you when I'm recording it. So I keep you in mind for my idea of you, So
that is so awesome to hear.
Yeah.
You bring such, I don't even know if this is quite the right word, such credibility, even if there's, and I'm speaking as a writer, if I don't get something quite right in the book, you make it okay. You bring such credibility to Kate and the characters. And I have to tell you that Outsider, just because it's, it was released July 7th, that is the one audiobook that I have not listened to. And so I have that to definitely look forward to. I may not wait for a road trip. I'll wait for, a walk or something like that, or, who knows what, but I can't wait. You also do some other sort of voiceover things, other things. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I started acting when I was 5, so I do kind of pretty much everything. I have a bachelor's and a master's in acting, so I kind of bring all of that to whatever work I'm doing, and mostly now I do voiceover, which I mostly have done voiceover since my daughter was born in 1998. A lot of my career kind of shifted to that, so I do a panoply of things, with like English as a second language, and I do commercials, and I do a lot of animation and video games and all of that. I travel to a lot of Comic Cons, and then I do a lot of audiobooks, which is something I love, because you know the whole story. When you do a cartoon, or when you do a video game, you don't really know always how you fit into that story. You don't know, sometimes for a video game, you only see your lines. So you have all these reacts and you don't know where they're going to put them, or you have lines that go with something else, but you don't know how it will fit into the player's experience. With an audiobook, you can kind of craft it along, start out in a way that sets the story up and move it, and then slow it down, and kind of you can take the reader on a journey that is specific to the author. Mm-hmm. So like the way I attack one of your books is different than the way I attack or approach another author, and the characters too, for that. So in some ways I prefer an audiobook because it's meatier, and there's much more acting involved in the sense of like fully creating and understanding what drives people. And
right. And when you work, like, I mean, this is kind of a technical question.
Yeah.
Soundproof booth with the big mic and all of that stuff. Yeah. And how many hours are you able to read? And how long does it take to do an audiobook, to narrate an entire novel?
I think they usually like to allow 2 hours of in the booth time to 1 hour of finished recording. Okay. And if you're cooking along and you've got a good engineer, you can, you can easily get to like an hour and a half. And that includes having some lunch or taking a stretch after an hour and a half, or just chatting for a second. But I would say I usually on an audiobook, I work around 8 hours for the day. We don't take many breaks.
Yeah.
I work now with the COVID. I'm mostly at home in my closet, and it's fairly soundproofed. I have a great mic that is the same as studios that I work in use. Sometimes I'm alone. Sometimes I have an engineer who's on Skype or on something. So in my head, they can hear what I'm doing. Sometimes we work it out through all these different ways. Yeah. But for the most part, it can take 3 for outsider, maybe, I can't remember exactly, and I tend to just block it all out. Yeah. It's like birthing a child. You're just like, a couple years later, you're like, that was nothing. So I think this was probably 3 8-hour days.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, or somewhere around there. And some books, if it's really like a book that you just have to get in, I try to do a double, like I've worked from 10 to 10. And then we've just tried to get as much done in that time, because you're already on a roll and you know where the voices are and you're kind of in it. It's hard on your voice, and it's hard to sit without moving. Like I'm moving a lot right now, but you can't move this much, which is why I do it. But you can't move this much when you're recording, because then you can hear the rustle and the mic picks up everything. Yeah. So yeah, it's weird, and it's really hard, but at the same time, you're just so in it. It's better to get in the zone and just keep going.
Yeah, that's actually a lot faster than what I thought. But very intensive hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I just, you're just so fabulous at it. I feel like I should say one of the things about Outsider that I didn't think to mention before. I get a lot of reader mail. And a lot of readers always ask me, how is it that Kate Burkholder, went from a, wayward Amish girl to the chief of police of a small town in Ohio, Painters Mill, Ohio. And, I've always known that the character who is introduced in Outsider, Gina Colarosa, she's in fact mentioned in the first book of the series. And I've always known of her existence.
Yeah.
It was sort of, she was not introduced. She was just mentioned in passing. And this book sort of explains that journey that Kate took when she fled Painters Mill basically when she was 18 years old. And, went to Columbus, Ohio. She was very much down on her luck. Most people know that the Amish only go to school through the 8th grade. And so through Gina and in the course of this book, the reader finds out how Kate found her way, how she got her education, how she found her way into law enforcement. And it's an important piece of how Kate Burkholder became the person that she is. And that was one of the things that made this book so satisfying to write, because, I know Kate Burkholder, I created her, but I have to say in the course of this book, I learned some things about her that I didn't know when I started the book. And that's usually, not always, usually that's a good thing when you're a writer.
Yeah, I feel the same though. I learned so much more about who she really is and why she's so grounded. And I think too, she's had to make some very strong decisions and not easy ones her whole life. And then now we understand more the root of her career and why she's such a great person now. And then I think this is also what drives her to really put herself on the line all the time. Yeah. Which is incredible. Yeah. She's like our modern day superhero, really. Oh, she doesn't do it for herself. She does it for the community, for the good. Yeah.
And I think, with her, especially with her religious, she had a very religious upbringing. I think, you know, I don't want to give anything away, but in terms of some of the things that happened in the course of the first book, Sworn to Silence, you know, I think sometimes Kate Burkholder feels like she has a little something to atone for. And I think that's one of the things, it's not a big thing, but I think that's one of many things that drives her forward. And I think that's one of the things that also makes her a good chief of police.
Yeah.
And, you know, good cop. And I think that's, you know, that's pretty much shown over the course of, you know, of the series. If you think about Kate Burkholder, who she was in that first book, and you think about who she is now, she's grown a lot. And there was a lot of room for growth because she's very, you know, she was a very fallible character in those early books, and I think she's come a long way since then. And I think that's one of the challenges when any writer writes a series is, you know, you have to keep that series fresh, and every book has to be you have to try to make it better than the book before it, and you have to keep it fresh. And I think most important of all, you have to keep your characters growing.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I really try to do with every book.
I think you've achieved that. I mean, I feel like I've learned something about the characters and myself by the end of each of these books.
Oh,
and I feel like because we all put ourselves in Kate's shoes, and boy, we've had quite a workout by the end. You know, like I feel like
in lots of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just
all that jaunting through the snow.
Yeah, seriously, they're always running. And I do love that, because then I like to kind of be running through, and then they're like, you know, it's the thing of kind of being out of breath without like having to do the whole thing like that, you know. But and it really is, there's definitely an energy and a flow to the books from the technical side that I love to be able to bring out. I think your writing just does that naturally. So I love our partnership actually in this, to be able to kind of add a different layer. I think the books on their own are fantastic, but I'm just so privileged to have the added layer to accompany people on their car trips.
Oh, Kathleen, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I'm wondering if I'm not exactly sure how we're doing on time.
I don't know either.
Kelsey, I'm wondering, are we going to do a Q&A, or are we able to do a Q&A?
We can do a Q&A if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. Are we able to,
Kelsey, do you want to ask the questions, or should we read them off this is an informal chat, guys, so.
Either way you guys would like. Would you like me to read them for you?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
All right, this one's for Linda. How do you keep track of all the clues as you're writing? Like, i.e. what information is revealed when, which characters know what facts, who's lying for what reasons? And they said, thank you.
That is a really great question. And, you know, sometimes I do get lost in the clues. And I do quite a bit of rewriting. I do quite a bit of shuffling of scenes and shuffling of the events that happen in the course of the mystery and the solving of the crime, and trying to have the chronological events happen in a very logical order. And, you know, I basically keep things written. I have to keep things written down. There's no way I would be able to remember all of those clues and keep everything inside my head. So I basically write them down, shuffle them around. And, you know, occasionally I've been known to use just plain index cards. There's something about, as opposed to using a computer or a laptop, I like to write things down. It really just helps my brain sort of keep things in order. And that's how I do it. And that I have just found over the period of several books, that just works best for me.
Sounds good. I have another question. Do you have any plans for Kate to solve a case outside Painter's Mill in Ohio?
Well, I'm wondering how to answer that because I do have an idea that that I've been thinking about for quite some time, and this idea actually is kind of came to being after I had lunch with an Amish gentleman in Ohio. And so I would have to say I am batting around that idea right now. And I'm very intrigued by the idea. I haven't really pitched it yet, but I think it'll fly. I think it's a really good idea. I did like the book and Among the Wicked. That was actually one of my favorite books in the series. That's the one in which Kate Burkholder traveled to upstate New York, which is a fast-growing Amish community, and she sort of had to infiltrate, the Amish community up there to solve a murder, a possible murder. And so I think every now and then it's good to just sort of veer away from the comfort of Painter's Mill and go into uncharted territory. So I think I might be doing that at some point in the near future.
I might suggest going to Australia because I'm very good at Australian accents. So, or Ireland, maybe, whatever you want. I'm just
okay.
We have a lot of people who are asking if the books need to be read in order for the series.
Okay.
That?
I love to look at reviews, reader reviews. I think they're important. Since I write the books, it's hard for me to tell, but in reading reader reviews, well, out on Goodreads, et cetera, and, judging from the mail that I get from people, each book is a standalone mystery, a standalone story from beginning to end. But I think that what you get if you begin with the first book in the series, Sworn to Silence, is you get the background on all of the characters. And I think those characters are more meaningful when you read the book and sort of what makes them tick. And that's, not only Kate and Tomasetti, but, I've also got some minor characters in there that are just tremendously fun to write. Pickles and Glock and Skid and Mona and all of those characters I just love. And I think if you start with the first book and read through, you're really going to have a better understanding of all the characters. So that's what I would do.
I agree. It's you really hook into the adventure and just go, so yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
We have a few more questions for you if you guys are okay with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we've had several people write in that they're curious to see, have you had any response from the Amish community about your books?
I have, actually. Funny story, the very first year that I went on book tour, and I was very nervous. And one of my first events was at a small library in Ohio and a small town. It was a very small town. And I arrive at this library and the parking lot is jammed full of vehicles. There's not a single parking spot. So I had to park across the street at the high school. And I walk in and the library director says, Linda, when you're finished, this Amish gentleman in the back of the room there would like to speak with you. And I'm thinking to myself in the back of my mind, I'm going, oh boy, he's going to, give me an earful because, there's, if you've read the books, there's some language and there's a certain level of violence, or, I thought, well, maybe I didn't get some of my research right. I didn't know. So I did my spiel, and it was so funny because we actually did a book giveaway that night, and the Amish guy won the book. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's going to soften him up a little bit. But it turned out that I went, after I finished talking, I went back and talked to him, and he loved the book. And it was just one of the most meaningful conversations that I've ever had with a reader. On the other end of the spectrum, I received a letter from an Amish gentleman. I remember his first name is Levi, and he is from, I believe he's from Wisconsin. And he had just read the third book in the series, Breaking Silence. And he wrote me a letter in pencil, just on note paper, and said that he was so offended by the book that he burned it, that he burned the book. And, you know, I thought, you know, there was nothing I could say. I was sort of thinking in the back of my mind, I wish you had donated it to a library or something like that. But so it sort of runs the gamut. I think it just depends on the person. So I've, you know, had both experiences with Amish readers.
Awesome. All right, we have just a few more if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Are any of your other books going to be made into movies? You've had several people ask that in the chat.
Well, that is always an exciting question. I have to tell you, when An Amish Murder came out and I found out that Neve Campbell was going to be Kate Burkholder, it was an exciting moment. And we have received, my agent, and then she also has a film agent in LA. We have received a lot of inquiries about this series. Wow. And, you know, we sort of, you know, you don't really pay a lot of attention early on, just because if somebody wants to look at it, or, you know, they say they're going to do an option, you know, anything could happen, or, you know, probably nothing is going to happen. But we've had a lot of inquiries. We are hopeful. I think that you know, this series sort of lends itself to either you know, cable or even the big screen. I think there's you know, a lot of people don't know very much about the Amish. I think there's an element of mystery about the culture and the way that they live, in the history and just everything. And so, you know, we're hopeful, and, you know, it's out there, it's floating around. We don't have any solid bites at this moment, but you never know what the future might bring.
Okay, I have one final question. I just want to also say we've had comments in the chat about Audible, so they've been loving the books that they've been reading, the narration. We've had people comment on that. And so our final question for this evening is, what is your daily writing schedule look like?
Well, I am a morning person, and you know, my brain is fresh in the morning, you know, post coffee. I like to get behind my laptop, and, you know, Kathleen, you were saying that when you are doing your actual narration, mm-hmm. you read over what you did the day before. That's exactly how I start my writing day. I'll you know, look at what I wrote the day before. I do a little bit of editing, and then that sort of gives me the momentum to get into that next the next scene. I love to write scenes that I know I have it in my head what is going to happen. Sometimes those transitions between scenes are a little bit more difficult. And of course, there's always, you know, and I'm not complaining, it's just a fact, there's always a deadline looming. And so I usually try to write, you know, first thing in the morning. I'll get behind my computer at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I'll write until probably maybe noon. If it's going well, I may write until 1 o'clock or so. By then, my brain is mush. And I go over to, you know, promotion or social media, or I just quit for the day and, you know, go do some work on the house or something like that. But that's you know, usually how I work. If I can get 4 or 5 pages done in a day, I consider that a pretty successful day. But I'm also one of those writers where I'm usually never satisfied with my work, and I usually nobody reads my work. I go over the book. I go through the book probably 4 or 5 times editing before I even send it to my editor. And I am lucky enough. My editor, Charlie, I love him. He's just a great ideas, fantastic editor, and we work really, really well together. So.
Alrighty. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. This has been such a fascinating evening, and it was a pleasure getting to listen to you both.
Thank you.
Just a reminder about the Learn It Owl. If you guys purchase a book, there's the link in the chat. If you purchase a book from the Learn It Owl, we are having signed book plates that'll be sent out to you with the book. So you will have that option.
Okay.
And once again, I'd like to give a warm thank you guys for your evening. It was such a fantastic program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Many thanks to Kathleen and the library, Kelsey and Alex. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Especially since we can't get together. We all are used to traveling so much more. This was the next best thing. And don't forget, through Libro, you can order audiobooks, and they can be credited towards your local bookstore too. So that's another thing to remember, that you can, so you can do that. Audible is really fantastic, but you can also help out your local shops that way too.
What is that website, Kathleen?
Libro, I could be Libro FM. I can't remember, but I have to find it.
It is Libro FM.
Libro FM, yeah.
Libro
so
FM.
you can do that too, so that you can get audiobooks through your local bookstores, because so many bookstores don't carry them, the solid copy. So they can order it for you and send it out. So curbside pickup.
All right.
Anyway, you guys, thank you. This was so amazing. And since we couldn't be in Ohio, we're almost there. Stay safe, everybody. Wear a mask and keep reading.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Thank you, everybody. Many thanks. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.